Welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Eugene Chan, and with me this evening is the Managing Director of Hong Kong Electric, Francis C.Y. Cheng. Mr. Cheng joined the company in 1979 as a graduate trainee and has since witnessed and helped shape nearly half a century of Hong Kong's energy story. He brings a rare blend of scientific and engineering expertise with fellowships of both the Royal Society of Chemistry and the Hong Kong Institution of Engineers. He's going to take us behind the scenes to understand what it really takes to keep the lights on for Hong Kong people. Welcome to the show for the first time, Francis.
Hi, Eugene.
We have been talking about this episode for quite some time, and finally the right time has come.
Yes.
Especially with all the so-called energy crisis at the moment due to the Middle East war. I'm sure the viewers will feel that the fuel costs are going up all over the world and supply is really being squeezed like have never been before. But your company, Hong Kong Electric, has just announced that a decrease in fuel cost charge, and this is actually a further decrease of 4.4 cents per unit. Quite an amazing news. And how have you managed to do this in this difficult time?
Well, we cannot make miracles, right? The fact of the matter is because of the present mechanism for determinations of what we call the fuel cost charge, or FCC, is based on a host of factors. And principally, for determining the FCC for May, this coming month, we have to rely on the fuel prices of January, February, and March.
Right.
So in January and February, the fuel prices have been quite stable. The Middle East war started at the end of February, but soon after the crisis began, because of these restrictions of liquefied natural gas going through the Strait of Hormuz, so we have to use energy mix, and we have to swap some of our energy supply arrangement to preserve the natural gas in our FSRU, what we call the floating storage and gas regasification unit.
Right.
So that is the reason why the March fuel prices were not sky high as compared to the international market.
Right. Francis, are you implying that price adjustment is going to be along the horizon? It's going to be very soon? Yeah,
I think as we have reviewed in our news release, starting from the middle of the year, the customer will have to expect a hike in the FCC.
Right. So we must thank you for at least the current price decrease. But what if the actual, I'm sure the negotiations is happening right at this moment. What if they reach an agreement, everything back to normal? Do we still expect to see the price increase, or will we see a price increase no matter what in the next few months?
Yeah, in the next few months, I think the price increase will be there, because the price hike has already appeared in the market. But going on, looking forward, if the war dies down quite quickly, then that price hike might be for a few months. But if the war continues, then the price hike will continue.
Right, so you're saying that this Middle East war, although it's quite far away from us,
yes,
I think all the Hong Kong people will be feeling the pressure, especially with all this, the supply squeeze and also the price increase in energy cost.
Yeah, we expect so. Yeah.
Right. So when that happens, I'm sure you being in the driving seat, you would think about, I think coal in general is more accessible and is sort of less volatile than the LNG that comes from the Middle East. Why don't we rely on that for this moment? I know we're trying to go carbon neutrality, but in difficult times and say special times to do special things, right? So is this the right time to rely back on coal? Yeah,
I think in the past few years, this coal to gas transition has been happening. And we have been replacing 4 of our coal-fired units with gas-fired units. So at the present moment, we have 4 gas-fired units free coal-fired units in order to meet the customers' supplied demand. We cannot go back.
I see.
So, for example, we cannot go back to use coal in these gas-fired units. So basically, we have to have natural gas.
I see. So Francis, so if that's the case, what you're saying is whether the war whether it lasts longer, that will be having a lot more longer-term effect to us.
Yes.
I'm sure you have to be considering with all this geopolitical tension that's happening right all over the world right now.
Yes.
Especially with the Middle East. What contingency plans do we have in place? And what is the worst scenario it can look like for Hong Kong?
Well, the worst scenario is you do not have enough gas supply to sustain our electricity output. That will be the worst situations. But before you come to that worst situation, of course, you have other alternatives. So whether we can get gas from other regions rather than the Middle East, and if we have oil, then our gas-fired units will be able to burn oil, even though it is not desirable, and there are some technical difficulties in doing so. So, worst come to worst, we can use oil, but oil, you have to remember that it's still very expensive, and if oil is used, then the emissions will be worse off as compared to gas.
Right. So, Francis, I think now you have given a picture of really challenging times ahead.
Yes, yes.
Not only for the company, for households and for businesses.
Yes.
As we know, Hong Kong Electric supplies electricity to Hong Kong Island and Lamma Island. So what practical tips will you give to the viewers tonight? What can we do? How can we mitigate this sort of anticipating rising energy costs? What can we do to minimize our energy, try to minimize costs in the coming months?
Yeah, I think we have to save energy. We have to save electricity. So customers will have to make use of this relatively low price window to develop their habits of saving energy. Say, for example, turn off the air conditioner when it is not required, or use a fan together with the air conditioner. So this would help to lower the energy cost. Switch off electrical appliances when they are not necessary. Keeping the fridge maybe 70% full in order to make it more efficient. And for businesses, maybe doing some energy audits to see whether there are ways or measures to lower the energy bill. So all in all, if you do these energy saving measures, so in the end maybe the energy bill will come down, or even come down and not go up.
Right. From a practical point of view, can we approach your company if I'm clients of Hong Kong Electric to ask for advice? Yeah,
we provide free energy audits to businesses.
Right.
Looking at ways to save their energy. We also provide some smart power services for subsidizing business to change to energy efficient appliances.
Right. So viewers, listen to this. I mean, the Hong Kong Electric Managing Director has said that we can go up to this company to get more advice to minimize our energy costs in months to come.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I know that, let's move on further to the current situation. I know that reliability is something that Hong Kong is very proud of. That I know that you have what we call a 6 nines, meaning your reliability level exceeding 99.9999%. So what exactly meant by that? And I'm sure people who have been served by your company didn't realize that we have been served by one of the most reliable power company in the world. Yeah. So what exactly is that?
One of the main things that we can achieve this is most of our cables are put underground.
I see.
And that was a thing that was not started by me, but by many generations of our forerunners. And even before 100 years ago, when we did the energy supply to urban areas, we use underground cables rather than overhead lines. So in Hong Kong, you won't see overhead lines in the urban areas. But in fact, in some other areas, even in some advanced cities, like maybe Tokyo or other Asian countries, you can find overhead lines in urban areas. So this is one of the things that our forerunners have the foresight in doing so. And then along that line, we have been undergrounding all our cables, or most of our cables.
Right.
And we have used cable tunnels to replace overhead lines, so that these underground cables and cables in tunnel are shielded from the extreme weather effect in recent years.
So maybe that's why Hong Kong has been enjoying this high reliability.
Yeah, that is one factor. The other factor is our company has been some of a forerunner in many of the technical aspects. For example, in the automations of our transmission and distribution network, our company is in fact one of the few companies in the world that impact on this and that carry out this type of thing. In fact, some of the equipment that were not available in the market, and our engineers design them and manufacture them ourselves.
I see.
So we are keeping on this spirit, and we are extending these automations to our low voltage networks now, using Internet of Things, using AI and other advanced technologies.
Right. Francis, time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more Straight Talk. Welcome to Straight Talk. Earlier, we looked at how Hong Kong Electric keeps our electricity system running with exceptional reliability. But beyond keeping the lights on, there's growing pressure to reduce emissions. Can Hong Kong Electric meet the government's emission reduction targets? That's something that we will find out later on in the show. Francis, before we go into that area, I'd like to just reiterate that you have told us that in coming months, the energy cost, the bill will be rising because of the Middle East war and all the geopolitical tensions. And what we can do is we try to learn to save our electricity, and going up to your company for advice is one of the options that we can do. And also you mentioned that why Hong Kong being able to enjoy such a high reliability is all the substations that you put down and all the underground cables you have done. When you mentioned that, I'm sure the viewer is going to ask you, how do you actually monitor? For example, if you're going to have power tower, you can see them if there's something wrong, but of course that's not good for health. But while we have all those advantages, how do you actually maintain their reliability because you can't see them?
Yeah, I think for the network, what we call the transmission and distribution network, we have all the sensors to sense whether there are problems in the network. And if there are things happened or there are any fault that have been detected, then this automatic system will isolate the fault and automatically. And our people in the control room will be able to see what had happened and then do the follow-up or mitigations measures correspondingly.
Right. So apart from all these sensors, I think earlier before we started the show, I've asked you, you've been there for like maybe a few decades, and I said, and you said to me, with the advance of technology, you have actually reduced your workforce from over 1,000 to now 400 people. So do things like AI help in your day-to-day work as well?
Yeah, we have to qualify when we said 1,000 to 1,200 to 400 something people is the power stations.
Oh, I see.
For the whole company, I think we have reduced from 3,000 something, or maybe 3,300 to 1,800 now, over a span of 30 to 40 years. So in terms of AI, what we are doing is we have been using AI for a different front in our business. The first one is the customer services. So we make use of AI to respond to customers' written message and requests. And we also use AI to try to analyze the customer's call to see how we deal with them, and do we deal with these customers' call effectively? Right. So this is the first area. The second area that we have been using AI is on our work processes. So how we can improve our work processes, and how could we streamline the workflow, how could we automate the workflow. And we are doing this by using our line department general staff. So they are not AI experts, but they can use these AI tools to improve these work processes. The third area that we have been using AI is the how to do the on-condition measurement of the health of our equipment. So, for example, we have been developing an in-house AI model to make use of the past test data of around 5,000 cables, underground cables, and then to determine what are those cables that have not been tested, but we have some background information on these cables in order to select those risky cables for testing so that they will not fail while supplying to the customers.
Right. So, Francis, it looks like you have been using AI applications in many aspects.
Yes.
Is it because you have done some background work on your company? Is it because of your collaboration with your stakeholder from State Grid Corporation of China, that they are basically specialists in AI applications and technology? Has that been the major reason why you've been able to apply all these effectively?
I think both. In fact, we started off our AI journey for quite some time.
Right.
So internally, we have been promoting the use of AI throughout our own businesses, and we have our own innovation steering structure in order to drive this innovation. And at the same time, we have been cooperating with mainland companies as well as the local universities in trying to make use of these AI and other advanced technologies to improve our on-condition monitoring of our equipment. Yeah. So State Grid is one of our major shareholders, so we have been cooperating with them in many aspects. So because they have good manufacturing capability, and our people have the experience and the design capability.
Right.
So we have been co-inventing with them some of the new equipment. We have been using their equipment in our local context in some scenarios that they have not made use of. And also we have been using their standard products to develop add-on capabilities.
Right, Francis, I'm going to ask you an even more important question. Thank you for telling me about the State Grid, what they can do for the company. I'm sure the viewers will be wondering, when I'm sure you'll be under pressure from all aspects. I mean, as driving the ship, you have from the government, even the country, we're looking at reducing emissions. At the same time, we have gas supply constraints that you can get away from it, especially what's happening. So realistically, can both objectives be met, and what have to give if it doesn't work? I'm sure the viewers will want to know.
Yeah, I think Hong Kong has already declared, Hong Kong government has declared their carbon reduction plan, and that is by the year 2035, the city's carbon emission will have to be halved as compared to the 2005 level.
Right.
And then we are targeting for carbon neutrality by the year 2050. So the journey has to go on, but in this journey, Hong Kong cannot generate its own zero carbon electricity. So we have to do regional cooperations. So we are discussing how to import zero carbon electricity from Chinese mainland
Right.
to this area.
Right. Francis, recently, I'm sure everybody will be aware, we have the 15 5-year plan from national level, and then Hong Kong is doing our 5-year plan as
Yes.
well. Are you saying that because of one of the aim is to have energy security, given what's happening in the world, and also green energy for our development? Will we be relying more and more with cooperation with mainland because they have all this cleaner or so-called renewable energy like nuclear or wind or even solar? Is that the directions we're moving?
Yeah, I think at least in the interim to achieve the 2035 goal, the carbon reduction by half, and we have to do these regional cooperations. And moving forward further along, and whether there would be other zero carbon technology that has come up that can do the job. Say, for example, hydrogen, green hydrogen. Whether we can have the green hydrogen economy by then, and then we have to wait and see. But I think if there are no other suitable alternatives, then the regional cooperation is the direction they have to head for.
Right. Francis, I'm going to ask you the last final question that I'm sure the viewers will be really keen to know. That you know that as our life goes on, a lot of costs of living has increased, some has decreased. And you mentioned that in the foreseeable future, there will be increases in energy costs. So with all these things along the line, with working with the mainland, with cooperation and everything, do you foresee that we have to spend more money on infrastructures, meaning they'll be passed on to the customers, or you think in the long run, energy costs is going to come down?
In order to bring the zero carbon electricity from the Chinese mainland to Hong Kong, you have to inevitably build a big transmission network for it. So that would be quite a substantial investment.
Imagine that, yes.
But the consequence would be, in the long term, you have much more stable energy prices. And because of the advance in the green energy in the mainland China, in the Chinese mainland, then sure we will be able to benefit from it.
Right, Francis, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it then.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your insights. And as a former Saudi oil minister once said, the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. It ended because we found something better. The challenge for Hong Kong is not just securing supply, but embracing what comes next. Have a good evening and see you next week.